A few weeks ago, I returned to my grandmother's Victorian house. It was my childhood home, and I thought being there would help me clear my head after my breakup. I felt lost. The house was old and full of memories. The floors creaked beneath my feet as I walked through the dim rooms, heavy with dust and time. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. I wanted to write, to find inspiration among the old books, but instead I felt a sense of unease creeping in. On my second night, a noise woke me up. It came from the attic. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the sound grew louder. It was a wailing. It didn't sound like an animal, though. It was deep and sad, almost like a human. I pressed my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut, hoping it would just stop. But it got worse. My heart raced as fear settled in. What was that sound? The next day was a blur. I tried to distract myself with chores around the house. I sorted through boxes, but the wailing kept echoing in my mind. I felt like the house was watching me, as if it had a heartbeat, slow and heavy. Things started to flicker in the light, and cold drafts prickled my skin. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that the old house was playing tricks on me. But still, I felt eyes on me around every corner. I found my grandmother's journal in the kitchen. It was hidden behind old cookbooks. The earlier pages were beautiful, filled with her neat handwriting. But the end was different. The last few entries were shaky and frantic. She wrote about family secrets and warned me about the attic. One sentence caught my eye. "Beware of the wailing." My stomach turned. What did that mean? That night I sat in the living room, trying to convince myself the journal was just stories. But the wailing came back, louder and more desperate. I felt drawn to the attic, but the thought terrified me. It felt wrong. My heart raced, and a knot formed in my stomach. I thought about my own pain, and I felt a connection. Perhaps this crying was a call for help. A shift in the air caught me off guard. I could sense something in the room with me. I stood up, trembling, searching for the source of this energy. I took a cautious step toward the staircase, knowing I had to find the truth. Then suddenly, the door slammed open by an unseen force. I jumped back and whispered, "What are you doing?" I was alone, but the presence felt heavy. I thought I heard the wailing again, much closer this time. It was now or never. I turned and ran for the door. My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of the house followed me. I knew I had to get out. As I stumbled outside, I took a deep breath, but the wailing echoed in my mind, a memory I could not shake. I had returned to my grandmother's house, but I realized then, maybe I was never meant to leave. The next morning, I sat on the front steps, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I thought about calling someone, maybe a friend or even my mom, but what would I say?
"Hey, I think my grandmother's house is haunted?" They would probably laugh it off. Still, the wailing wouldn't leave me alone. I had to do something. My first instinct was to go back inside, despite the fear clenching my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that the answer lay within those walls. I took a deep breath and walked back into the house. The air felt different, thicker, charged with an unnameable tension. I hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, the attic door looming above. I could hear that ghostly wail again, more of a whisper now. As I climbed the stairs, I shook, unsure of what to expect. Each step creaked, echoing in the silence. I reached the attic door and paused. I remembered the journal. My grandmother's fear was palpable through her words. Still, a deeper instinct pushed me forward. I needed to understand. I opened the door slowly. Dust swirled in the beam of light filtering through a small window. Old furniture was stacked haphazardly, covered in sheets, and shadows flickered in the corners where the light didn't reach. The wailing seemed to ebb and flow like a distant tide, coaxing me to step further inside. I scanned the room, trying to end the cycle of fear gripping me. It was then that I noticed a small box tucked beneath an old trunk. My heart raced as I knelt down to examine it. The box was worn, its edges frayed, but it had no lock. I opened it with a trembling hand. Inside were old photographs, brittle and yellowed, featuring family members I barely recognized. A few notable ones were of my grandmother with a young woman, someone who looked strangely familiar. In one, the woman stood in front of the attic, her smile bright, yet her eyes held a sadness that chilled me. I glanced back toward the room. Could this be her ghost trapped inside the house? Just then, the wailing intensified, reverberating through the attic like a siren. I felt a chill seep into my bones. I turned back to the box, desperate for answers. That was when I spotted a small folded note at the bottom. I pulled it out, breath hitching. "Find me in the shadows," it read. "Only then will you be free." Something shifted in the air, a pull toward the dark corners of the attic. I felt a sudden urge to investigate. Shadows danced ominously, beckoning me. My pulse quickened. This felt like a trap, but I had to know. I was already in too deep. I took a deep breath and stepped toward the darkest corner. As I moved closer, I noticed something flickering there, an old mirror half hidden by debris. The reflection caught my eye, but the image wasn't just me. There was a figure standing behind, shrouded in darkness. My heart stopped. I knew in that moment things were about to change forever. I froze, staring into the mirror. The figure behind me was faint but unmistakable. It looked like the woman from the photographs, her eyes filled with an expression that sent a jolt of terror through me.
The reflection's mouth moved silently, as if trying to communicate something important. My instinct was to turn and run, but my feet wouldn't budge. I felt rooted to the spot. Suddenly, the wailing crescendoed, echoing off the attic walls. The sound had become almost physically painful, and I clutched my ears in a futile attempt to block it out. I blinked, taking a shaky step backward. That was when I noticed something on the floor, a small, dark cloth peeking out from behind an old trunk. The shadows seemed to pulse around it, as though urging me to investigate. I slowly knelt down, heart pounding, and pulled the cloth free. It was an old shawl, fraying at the edges, but I recognized it immediately. It was the same shawl the woman in the photo wore. I couldn't help but feel a connection to her. The air around me felt electric, crackling with energy, and I held the shawl tightly. "Who are you?" I whispered, eyes darting back to the mirror. The woman was still there, staring at me, her expression shifting from sadness to a pleading urgency. It was clear she wanted me to do something. Then, the attic door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing through the space, making me jump. I whipped around, panic surging. I was trapped. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, hoping somehow the answer would come. But all I got was the haunting wail, a sound of loss and longing. There was a flash of movement in the mirror, and I gasped. The woman stepped closer, her outline becoming clearer. It was as if she was breaking through the layers of dust and shadows. I could hear her voice now, soft yet insistent. "Find me," she urged, her lips forming the words. "Find the truth." The room shifted, and I felt the pressure of something heavy, like a storm about to break. I swallowed hard, wrestling with fear. "Find you? How?" I asked, feeling small and helpless. But the mirror flickered once more, and a vision erupted before me. Fragments of memories, images of my grandmother laughing with the woman, a tree outside, a date, and an old compass. My mind raced with the new information. There had to be a reason why these flashes overwhelmed me now. I felt compelled to act. I grabbed the shawl, folding it carefully before tucking it under my arm. I turned back to the mirror, the woman's expression now a guiding light. As I stepped away, the wailing quieted, replaced by an eerie stillness. The attic held the key. I was sure of it. I needed to uncover the connection between the woman and my grandmother. But where to start? I took one last glance at the mirror, half expecting a response. Instead, the figure simply nodded, urging me to leave. But as I reached for the attic door, my heart sank. I realized I wouldn't be able to escape until I uncovered the truth, whatever it was. Stepping into the hallway, I felt the air shift behind me, the wailing fading into whispers. I turned back once more. The mirror showed nothing but my reflection. Whatever was in the attic didn't want me to leave without understanding the past. Then the house creaked again, a warning perhaps. I realized I was in deeper than I had thought, but this time I was ready. I was determined to find out how this mystery connected to my family and ultimately to me. I took a deep breath and headed downstairs, a surge of resolve pushing me forward. This was only the beginning, and I knew I had to confront whatever was next. No turning back now. I cautiously made my way down the creaky stairs, each step echoing in the otherwise quiet house. The walls seemed to close in around me, and my heart raced with uncertainty. I had always found comfort in my grandmother's home, but now it felt like a maze filled with shadows and secrets. I needed to find answers. As I reached the bottom, I paused in the living room, scanning the familiar space. The photos lining the mantel caught my eye. They were filled with smiles,
happy moments frozen in time. I spotted the woman again, her vibrant smile contrasting with the heavy sense of dread I felt. My grandmother stood beside her, radiating joy, completely unaware of the sorrow that lingered in the atmosphere now. I took a deep breath and recalled the flashes of memories from the attic, the tree, the date, the compass. My instinct told me that these objects would lead me closer to the truth. I needed to get to my grandmother's old study. She kept a collection of her books and old letters there. Maybe I'd find something that tied everything together. I crossed through the quiet house, each room holding its own memories, and reached the study. I turned the knob and stepped inside. Dust motes swirled in the sunlight streaming through the window. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. My grandmother was a pack rat, but her clutter sometimes hid treasures. I began rummaging through the boxes, my hands shaking as I searched. Old letters, yellowing pages, and family records surrounded me. I felt a surge of desperation, not knowing when the feeling of dread would return. Time was slipping through my fingers, and I needed to act fast. Then I spotted it, a small, weathered compass resting among the books on the shelf. My heart jumped. This was it. I held it up, examining the intricate designs on the lid. Somehow it felt like an answer calling to me. But just as I was about to take a closer look, I heard it, a soft whisper, barely above a murmur. "Help us." The voice seemed to seep through the walls, surrounding me. My heart pounded harder. Was the spirit warning me, or was there more than one presence in this house? A rush of cold air sent chills racing down my spine. I instinctively turned toward the door, my instincts screaming at me to leave. The whispers grew louder, swirling like a storm in my mind. I squeezed the compass, trying to steady myself against the onslaught of feelings enveloping me.
That's when I saw it, an old dust-covered trunk tucked against the far wall, half hidden under a pile of books. I hesitated, but something deep inside urged me to approach it. What if there were more answers inside? Slowly, I walked over, each step heavy with uncertainty. I knelt in front of the trunk and felt a crack between the lid and the base. My breath caught in my throat. I had to know. It was as if the trunk was daring me to open it, to face whatever lay inside. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid. A musty scent wafted out, mingling with the anxiety that churned in my stomach. I peered inside, my pulse quickening, knowing deep down that this could change everything. What I found could very well lead me down a path I wasn't sure I was ready to take, but I had to know. Just as I leaned in closer, the room shuddered, and everything went dark. I jolted upright, gasping for air. The sudden darkness had swallowed me whole. The room was unnaturally still, as if time had stopped. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes, but nothing seemed to change. I could only hear my own heartbeat echoing loudly in my ears. Taking a breath, I reached out blindly, hoping to find the trunk. Instead, my fingers brushed against something cold and smooth, nudging it away. Panic gripped me. I needed light. I scrambled to my feet and stumbled backward, crashing into a pile of books. As I regained my balance, a faint flicker of light sparked to life in the corner of the room. I squinted, a flicker of hope rising in my chest. The light danced like a candle flame, drawing me toward it. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks, or maybe it was just a reflection, but a part of me felt compelled to follow. I edged closer, and that's when I saw her, a figure bathed in an ethereal glow. The woman from the photos, her smile now replaced with an expression of sorrow. Words caught in my throat. She seemed to beckon me, the whisper, "Help us," now resonating more strongly, echoing around us. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask. My voice trembled, barely a whisper, but she didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the compass resting on the trunk. My heart sank as I remembered its significance. It felt like a key to something deeper, a connection between our worlds. The air grew heavy again, and the whispers escalated, surrounding me. "Find the truth," the woman urged silently. A sudden chill rushed through my veins, deeper than before. I could feel something dark lurking just outside the light, influenced by the emotion that radiated from her. I took a step back, but she reached out, her translucent hand seeming to stretch beyond the realm of physical existence. I hesitated, trapped between terror and an unexplainable longing. My instinct screamed for me to flee, but the compulsion to uncover the truth was stronger. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the study. Books toppled from shelves, scattering everywhere. I turned, startled, and the light flickered, dimming for just a moment before returning. That noise, it was a warning.
My heart raced as I realized I was not alone. I needed to act quickly. I grabbed the compass, feeling its weight steady my shaking hands. I glanced back at the glowing figure, desperate for clarity. What do I need to do? She pointed again, this time toward a collection of letters buried under a pile of clutter. Find the answer, her silent plea suggested with urgency. I ran over, shoving aside objects that clattered to the floor. As I lifted the letters, a sense of dread washed over me. I pulled one from the pile, my eyes widening as I read the name written at the top. It was a name I recognized, but it didn't belong in this context. Before I could process the revelation, the temperature in the room dropped dramatically, and I felt a presence looming behind me. Someone was in the house. A feeling of icy fingers danced down my back, locking me in place. I turned slowly, my heart pounding like a trapped animal. I knew then, this was only the beginning. I had opened a door that couldn't be closed. The whispers intensified, and I had no idea who or what awaited me next. As I pivoted slowly, I could see shadows shifting in the dim light, even though I couldn't make out a clear figure. My breath quickened, and panic threatened to overtake my senses. The whispers became louder, swirling around me like a tempest, drowning out my thoughts. Whoever or whatever was in the house, they didn't seem friendly. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice shaky. There was no response, just the oppressive silence that felt like a weight pressing on my chest. I strained to see through the darkness, slowly stepping backward, until I bumped into the trunk I had been drawn to moments before. The eeriness in the air heightened. I stumbled, and the compass clattered to the floor. It rolled away, landing under a nearby chair. I couldn't leave it there. It felt crucial to whatever was unfolding. I cursed under my breath, crouching to retrieve it. The faint light flickered again, illuminating parts of the room but casting unnerving shadows. That's when I saw movement, just at the edge of the light. My breath caught. A silhouette, tall and menacing, stood there, watching me. "Who are you?" I demanded, but my voice barely made it past my lips. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but fear rooted me to the spot. Suddenly, the figure lurched forward, disappearing into the flickering light, and in that moment, I saw something flash, a glimpse of anger or despair in the being's eyes. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead as a deep voice reverberated within my mind. "You shouldn't have come here." I scrambled to my feet, clutching the compass fiercely. Cold terror gripped me, and I ran back toward the letters, to the only source of truth I could grasp. Hands shaking, I fumbled through them, desperate for answers to the questions swirling in my mind.
Who were they? What did they want from me? One letter stood out, slightly yellowed with age. As I drew it out, the name at the top almost sent me reeling. It was my grandmother's name, scrawled in a way I recognized from childhood. There was a date included, and my heart skipped a beat. My grandmother had written this just days before her passing. Trembling, I unfolded the letter. Familiar handwriting flowed across the page, but the words it contained sent chills laced with dread down my spine. "There are things in this house that the light cannot touch. Beware of the darkness, for it holds the answers, but also the danger." Before I could digest this new horror, I felt the air shift. The presence behind me was no longer passive. It bore an urgency that made the hairs on my neck stand up. Suddenly, the whispering escalated into a cacophony, a mix of pleading and warning. Then everything went dark. The whispering ceased, leaving an unnatural silence that clawed at my nerves. My pulse thundered in my ears as I strained for any trace of light. Fear consumed me. I had stepped into something much larger than I could understand. If the darkness could take control now, then perhaps I had already walked too far down this twisted path. I stumbled in the darkness, disoriented and desperately searching for a light switch I knew I had seen before. My fingers brushed against the cold wall, a hard surface that felt like a lifeline. "Focus," I told myself, pushing against the panic rising up my throat. I had to find a way out, or at least something that could bring me back to reality. But reality felt like a memory, slipping away from me. The folder with the letters lay abandoned, and the compass had somehow rolled back against the chair's leg. I had to make sense of this chaos. My grandmother's warning rattled in my head like a haunting echo. Just as I turned to reach for the compass, a sudden, bright flash illuminated the room. A small beam, barely enough to see, cut through the void,
catching the edges of old furniture and jagged shadows. I could barely make out the trunk, the chair, the wall. Everything felt strange. "Why am I here?" I whispered, though I didn't expect an answer. And then that unmistakable sound returned. Whispers. They started softly, like the rustling of leaves, then grew louder until they felt like voices shouting all at once. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block it out. Then, without warning, a figure surged into the beam of light, a knee-buckling horror that was more human form than shadow. "Help me," it cried, a voice raw with anguish. It felt pleading yet accusatory. My heart raced. "Help me find it," the figure gasped again, gripping its head with its hands, as though something essential was lost within. "What do you want?" I shouted, but my words felt feeble, swallowed by the chaos. "Find the truth!"
It growled, and suddenly I saw what the being held tightly, a small glimmering object hidden just out of the light's reach. Before I could grasp what was happening, the light flickered out, plunging me back into darkness. My breath felt constricted, and I raised my arms in an instinctual defense. I looked around, stationed in my fear, waiting for the next moment of terror. I heard a soft thud, followed by rustling sounds drawing closer. I backed away until I felt the trunk behind me again. I had to be brave. The spirit needed me. It needed help to find something. I took a shaky breath, forcing myself to stand tall. I needed to investigate that glowing object. I eased my foot forward, carefully placing it on the floor where I had last seen the figure. My fingers unfurled, reaching down to where I thought it might be. To my shock, I felt something cool and smooth press against my palm. I squeezed it tightly as a sudden wave of warmth surged through me. It was a pendant, shaped startlingly similar to the compass I had dropped earlier. As I held it up, it glowed faintly, illuminating the corners of the room. The whispers grew quiet again, replaced by an overwhelming sense of urgency. I still felt lost, but I was not alone. Then I froze. I realized with dawning horror that I had stumbled onto a puzzle far more dangerous than I could understand. If finding the truth was the key to freeing the spirit, then what would I have to sacrifice to uncover it? My pulse quickened as I processed the gravity of what lay ahead. The spirit needed me, and I could sense darkness swirling, waiting for my next move. And just as I thought I might grasp it all, that feeling returned, a chilling presence looming behind me. "You shouldn't have found that," it whispered, just as I turned. The air was thick with dread as I swung around, my heart hammering in my chest. The darkness seemed to pulse around me, alive with menace. "Who are you?" I barely managed to croak out. The shadows grew heavier, pooling at my feet like an inky tide. "I am the one who guards what you seek," the voice rasped, echoing with an unnatural cadence. It came from deep within the shadows, a figure flickering in and out of view. There was something both familiar and terrifying about it. I raised the pendant, using its dim light to pierce through the thick shroud. The figure was defined now, a woman twisted with sorrow. Her long hair floated around her as if she were underwater, and her eyes, the sadness in them, it was almost palpable. "You have to go back," she warned. "You're not ready. Not yet." "What do you mean?" I asked, voice cracking. "I need to help." "Help," she scoffed, her laughter chilling. "You don't even understand what you're up against. It's not just a truth, it's a reckoning, one that demands a price." My grip on the pendant tightened. The warmth dissipated, replaced by a bone-deep cold. "Tell me what I need to do," I said, feeling the weight of necessity pressing down on me.
The shadows twisted and surged, and I stumbled back against the trunk. "You must confront the past," she said, her form flickering erratically. "The letters, the compass, it's all connected to something buried deep within these walls. But be careful. Not everything buried wants to be found." "What does that mean?" Panic bubbled inside me, wanting to escape. I needed answers, not riddles. "The truth is often protected by darkness," she replied, her voice fading as the shadows thickened around her. "You must choose what you're willing to sacrifice." Before I could respond, the pendant flared brightly, the light pushing back the darkness. The room around me shifted. Images began to splinter off the walls like broken glass. I was pulled into a whirlwind of memories, images of a younger version of my grandmother, laughing, loved, lost. In the chaos, one image stood out, A pocket watch nestled in her hands, inscribed with my family name. All at once the connection formed. "The watch!" I exclaimed. "It holds the answers. It has to." Hope surged within me, battling against my fear. Something essential lay hidden in that watch, something that could help the spirit, and possibly me. I glanced back, trying to pinpoint the wailing woman. As quick as she had come, the figure dissipated into the shadows, leaving only a lingering chill. The whispers rose again, a cacophony that threatened to swallow me whole. Suddenly, the walls felt like they were closing in. If I didn't figure this out, I would be lost here forever. "I will find the truth," I shouted defiantly into the void. "I will find your watch." At that moment, the light from the pendant blazed forward, illuminating a narrow door I hadn't noticed before. My pulse raced. It felt like the only way forward. I stepped toward it, ready to face whatever lay beyond. As I reached for the doorknob, I heard a sharp, anguished cry echo through the room. It made me hesitate for just a second, but there was no turning back now. I took a deep breath, turned the knob, and flung the door wide open. What awaited me on the other side sent a shiver down my spine. The light poured out from the door, flooding the room with a warm glow that felt like a heartbeat against the chilly dread I had just left behind. I stepped through the threshold, my breath hitching in my throat. The scene on the other side was surreal. I found myself in a dimly lit attic, cluttered with old trunks and cobweb-covered furniture. Dust motes danced in the light as it chased away some of the shadows that lingered in the corners. It smelled like aged wood and forgotten memories. A single window, draped with tattered curtains, framed the fading afternoon light. As I surveyed my surroundings, my heart surged with hope. Maybe the watch was here. I approached a weathered trunk, its leather cracked with age. It looked promising, a potential doorway to the past. I knelt beside it, fingers trembling as I unfastened the latch.
With a creak, the trunk opened. Inside, I found old letters, yellow with time, stacked haphazardly atop faded photographs. I rifled through them in a frenzy, searching for anything resembling a pocket watch or clues about my grandmother. The letters were filled with love and heartache, snippets of her life before she became the woman I knew. Each one felt like a thread pulling me deeper into her world. Suddenly, something glinted among the letters. My eyes widened as I reached for it. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. I pulled it free, and there it was, the pocket watch. It was exquisite, engraved with swirls and vines. My family name was etched prominently on the back, just like in the vision I had seen. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Then I remembered the woman's warning. Not everything buried wants to be found. I scanned the attic, suddenly feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching me. The air shifted, turning oppressive. An unsettling noise broke my concentration, a low, rumbling growl that echoed off the slanted walls. I stood up abruptly, clutching the watch, my heart racing. Shadows swirled around me, more defined this time, taking form and shrouding the edges of my vision. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice wavering, but my determination held steady. "I have the watch. What do you want from me?" The last word hung in the air like a knife ready to drop. Silence enveloped me for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then a disembodied voice reached my ears, sharper than the silence that preceded it. "It belongs to me," the voice echoed, deep and angry, resonating through the very floorboards beneath my feet. My blood ran cold. I turned to face the source of the voice, but the shadows twisted and obscured everything. I stumbled back, the pendant dimming, flickering like a dying star. I clutched the watch tightly, every instinct screaming at me to escape, but I couldn't let it go. I had to understand. I had to confront whatever malevolent force lurked in this space. Just then, a flash of movement caught my eye. There, in the corner of the attic, something flickered, an outline of the woman from before. The wailing spirit seemed pulled between the shadows and the light. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, reaching for me. I was stuck. I had discovered something monumental, but now I felt trapped between two forces. As dread closed in from all sides, I realized the truth. The watch held not just answers, but also defiance. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I shouted, "I'm here for the truth, and I won't back down." But deep down, I feared I might be playing a game with forces far beyond my understanding. And then, everything went dark. The darkness engulfed me once more, but this time it felt different, heavier, almost tangible. I fought against it, grasping the pocket watch like it was the only lifeline in an ocean of despair. The absence of light seemed to pull at me, threatening to pull me under. In that suffocating void, I heard the low growl again, now accompanied by an ominous whisper. Words I couldn't quite decipher, but the tone was unmistakable. Anger wrapped in fear. "Give it back," the voice hissed. "It is mine." I resisted the instinct to flee. Instead, I held the watch up, willing it to shine through the darkness. "No!" I shouted into the void, my voice trembling. "I won't let you take it." Then something shifted. Flickers of light danced around me, illuminating shadows that twisted and writhed like caught phantoms. The outline of the attic reappeared, but the atmosphere had turned chaotic. The once familiar room morphed, walls bending and sliding. The tension in the air shifted, almost as if something ancient awakened in response to my defiance. "Fear is the true darkness," the voice echoed. "You will learn." Before I could respond, I was thrust sideways, propelled by an unseen force. The watch slipped from my grasp, spinning through the air before clattering onto the ground. I gasped as it fell, the sound resonating like a death knell. "No!" I lunged for it, but as I reached out, the shadows enveloped the watch, hiding it from view. I felt cold fingers grasp my arm, tugging me backwards into the depths of shadow. It was as though the house itself conspired against me, weaving a web that pulled tighter with every breath I took. Suddenly, the scene shifted violently again, the edges of reality blurring. The attic expanded, and the whispers crescendoed into a frenzied roar. Memories fought for dominance, flashes of laughter, sadness, and sorrow swirling around me. I heard my grandmother's voice breaking through, sweet yet tinged with urgency. "You need to choose." "Choose?" I panted, panic clawing at my chest. "Choose what?" "Will you unleash the past?" she implored, her figure momentarily flickering back into view, her eyes filled with wisdom and warning. "Can you bear the weight of the truths that lie within?" A new voice interjected, harsh and cold. "Truths can shatter the soul." My heart raced. I was caught in the civil war between two forces. "What do you want from me?" I cried out. The weight of their expectations was overwhelming. "Only the truth," my grandmother whispered, the warmth of her encouragement piercing the cold around me again. "You must confront it, conquer the shadows, and you will find freedom." But the other voice wailed, louder now, echoing with a despair that echoed off the walls. The room lurched again, tossing me into a vision. I was thrust back to my grandmother as a child, clutching the same watch. The sun poured into the attic, illuminating her youthful face, blissful and unaware of the dark trajectory that awaited her. Time shifted like quicksand, and I understood suddenly that the watch was more than just an object. It contained the essence of family, of memories both sweet and bitter, of love lost and pain tucked away. I saw a moment of hope, a secret I had not known about, a bond forged in the struggle against shadows long before my time. Whatever the price to reclaim it, I realized I was willing to bear it. As the visuals blurred, I reached further into the light, grasping where the watch had fallen, desperation fueling my movements. I clenched my hands around it. Just as I felt it warm under my fingers, the darkness howled in protest. At that moment, the light burst forth. The ancient shadows shrieked in agony, burning away like fog under the sun. I felt every ounce of courage surge within me as I held the pocket watch high. "I will break the cycle," I cried defiantly. Light erupted from the watch, illuminating the room and scattering the shadows. The dark figure shrieked, evaporating into the light. It was a battle, perhaps more profound than I understood. Yet I stood my ground, trembling but unyielding. As the last remnants of the darkness vanished, I felt a sudden surge of energy in my core, the weight of my ancestors lifting. The burden of their secrets and sorrows was finally lightening. Just when I thought serenity would settle, I caught a glimpse of the woman, one last time. She nodded in acknowledgement, acceptance in her eyes. The glimmer of her figure melted into the light, feeling more resolved than lost. I staggered back, breathless, surrounded in stillness. The attic felt different now, still heavy, but with the promise of peace.
I clutched the pocket watch tightly, my heart still pounding. "Do you understand?" My grandmother's voice lingered, echoing softly in the corners of my mind. "There will always be shadows, but there is also light." I gazed around, acknowledging that the attic was still filled with remnants of the past, but now they held no threat. I didn't have all the answers. What had truly happened in this place still eluded me, but I knew one thing for sure. The cycle was broken, and I was free. I breathed in deeply, feeling the sweet air fill my lungs. No longer haunted by the wailing, I walked to the door, pocket watch secure in my grasp. Whatever shadows remained were whispers of history, not chains binding me to my fate. I opened the door and stepped into the light once more. Still, questions lingered like echoes in my mind. Was the darkness truly gone, or would it return, waiting patiently in the shadows? As I stepped away from the house, I realized some mysteries may remain unsolved, and perhaps they were meant to be that way. I looked back one last time, feeling a bittersweet freedom. I left behind the remnants of the past while carrying with me the lessons learned. I had faced the shadows, and they no longer held me captive. And as I turned toward the horizon, I felt for the first time a flicker of hope that I could truly move forward.